Recently, two pieces of news about the automotive supply chain seem to have made some subtle changes in the global auto industry. On August 25, according to the Sankei Shimbun of Japan on the 24th, the Japanese automobile manufacturer Honda will reorganize the global parts supply chain and consider decoupling from mainland China and other regions to create a supply chain of de-sinicization, reducing dependence on China. Besides, according to a Japanese media report on August 12, Mazda is considering reducing its reliance on parts from mainland China, mainly due to the closure of the epidemic in Shanghai and other cities in the first half of the year, which led to chaos in the supply chain, forcing Mazda to reduce production on a large scale. Mazda requires parts suppliers to increase inventories and requires parts to be produced at locations outside mainland China, such as Japan. Well, it is a little confusing. These Japanese car companies that have made a lot of money in the Chinese market in the past 2 decades are going to run away? Is this the de-sinicization of Japan, or is Japanese products unpopular in China? Is it possible for the Japanese auto industry, which has withdrawn from China, to return to prosperity in the future? In this video today, I am going to share my views with you. You are also very welcome to leave your ideas in the comment area or send an email to communicate with me. In fact, China and Japan have a long history of manufacturing. Manufacturing played an important role in Japan's post-war economic recovery. Japan did not have a developed manufacturing industry after the war. The rapid rise of Japan's manufacturing industry is inseparable from the help of the United States, which has helped Japan achieve the rapid rise of manufacturing. But Japan is a barren island country after all, and it is very scarce in terms of energy resources and material resources. For the expansion and sustainable development of the country, Japan can only learn from the United States and also relocate its industries. China, which has a vast land and abundant resources, has become Japan's first choice. But time has passed. China is already the world's second economy, and China's manufacturing industry ranks first in the world. Despite the impact of the epidemic, the local manufacturing industry has not been seriously affected. The world has seen the strength of China's manufacturing industry. The rise of China's local manufacturing industry has undoubtedly become a competitor for Japan to build factories in China. Take the car companies we are discussing today as an example. Japanese Honda and other fuel cars are the trump card of Japanese manufacturing, but with the rise of new energy vehicles in recent years, they are rapidly declining. It has become more and more difficult for Japanese companies to operate in China, so Japan can only withdraw its companies from China and carry out a passive process of de-sinicization. However, can Japanese car companies really achieve de-sinicization? Well, let me put it in this way. What would happen if a car was missing a completely inconspicuous wire? The answer is, the car cannot be installed, let alone delivered by the user. There are more than 1,000 assembly parts on a car, which are supplied by more than 200 first-tier suppliers. The number of parts of an ordinary household fuel vehicle is about 30,000. Electric vehicles do not have an engine and gearbox, and the number of components will be reduced by about 1/3. Including the additional batteries, motors, DC/DC converters, etc., there are up to 100 to 200 components for electric vehicles. Taken together, the total number of parts on an electric vehicle will be around 20,000. Therefore, if a car company wants to build a car smoothly, the first thing it needs is to spend a lot of money to build a reliable supply chain. The first thing to clarify is that Honda has not withdrawn the entire supply chain system from China for the time being, but has allowed the local Chinese supply chain to remain in the country while opening up a new, non-China-controlled supply system for other markets around the world, in addition to China. This means that if the plan is successful, Honda vehicles in Saitama, Japan, Marysville, Mexico, and other underground lines will no longer be equipped with parts from China. But, is it really that easy? Well, although Honda has established motorcycle, vehicle, and engine factories in 24 countries around the world, the parts produced in China cover almost all parts of a Honda car: chassis, suspension, brakes, doors, electrical systems, etc. The proportion of Chinese-made parts in Honda vehicles built at factories around the world varies from 10% to 50%. According to the Sankei Shimbun, Honda has issued an internal order to move parts in China to Southeast Asia, India, North America, and other regions, mainly because of concerns about uncertainty. In March of this year, affected by the closure of the Shanghai epidemic, the supply of Honda parts was cut off, and factories in China and Japan frequently stopped and reduced production. The production capacity of some Honda plants in Japan was reduced by about 50% in early May, and two joint ventures in China, Guangzhou Automobile Honda and Dongfeng Honda, also experienced partial or semi-shutdown of production lines. Therefore, if one day in the future, the Honda cylinder liner produced in Huizhou, Guangdong will no longer travel across the ocean and be installed on the Civic and CR-V off the assembly line in the Canadian factory, will Honda be ready to supply B? Whether Honda's factories in other countries are capable of filling the resulting capacity gap? Whether Honda can find a sense of security from other countries' supply chains due to the uncertainty felt in China's supply chain? Well, I have to say, everything is unknown. In fact, this is not the first time the global automotive supply chain has thought of de-sinicization. In the first quarter of 2020, when the COVID-19 first broke out in China, there were some voices calling for foreign auto companies to move their parts factories out of China and to Southeast Asia. They want to take this as an opportunity to change the status quo of the high proportion of Chinese components in the vehicle. But there are not many car companies that have promised, and even fewer have actually implemented them. For car companies, it is very difficult to move the supply chain out of China. Lower labor costs, high relocation costs, China's huge consumer base, and closer distance to auto assembly plants. In short, it is time-consuming, difficult, and expensive. If we move the supply chain, who will pay the extra cost? Customers obviously won't bear it, and we are even more reluctant to take this risk. The Asian supply chain system has shown great resilience, which is admirable. Valeo CEO Jacques Askenbrich said. Well, it is understandable for a multinational car company like Honda to plan to restructure the global parts supply chain, and it is reasonable for foreign investors to be more vigilant about the stability of the supply chain. However, China is the core node and key link of the global supply chain. China cannot do without the global supply chain, and the global supply chain cannot do without China. In fact, the Chinese market is not only the world factory of international car companies, but also the world's largest car consumer market. When the two are superimposed on each other, which car company dares to easily mention the word withdraw? Do they not want to make a good car, or do they not want to sell more cars? How do you all view this issue? Looking forward to seeing your insightful ideas. See you tomorrow.